Happy Sunday, everyone. Coming at you from, where am I? Austin, Texas, speaking at a homeschool conference this weekend. Not in my usual location at home in the office, or as I like to call it, the room formerly known as the office. It used to be my office where I do my musings. You see the bookcases behind me. Now it's the piano room. I got kicked out in favor of a piano moving. And so, but I am on a different location today. But I wanted to get this musing recorded and uploaded really quick because something just happened that I think is worth note, especially based off of some of the chatter that I've seen in recent weeks and months on social media. And that is Aaron Sherinian has popped his head up. He's made an appearance. There's been some speculation on social media I've seen from people with all the backlash that he got when his appointment, his hire, was announced, that maybe the church was going to push him out or quietly, make him go away or something. I never really believed that. I assumed that the position of both Aaron and the organization was that they'd wait for this to blow over. Well, he popped his head up. He made an appearance, and I want to talk about it. I'll get in for those who don't know who this gentleman is. I'll share a little bit in a minute. But first, let's set the stage for the appearance. So this past week in Utah, Salt Lake City was the host of the National Governors Association. This is a bipartisan association for all of the governors. And Governor Cox here in Utah has chaired the association for the past year. And then the Democratic governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, has been the vice chair. You've probably seen in the news their Disagree Better initiative that they've been doing. That's through this National Governors Association. So they had a conference in Salt Lake City scheduled for this past week. And somewhat at the last minute, it was announced that Zelenskyy from Ukraine, President Zelenskyy, and his wife would be visiting to make a speech and visit with the governors. So that happened. I read in the news, I wasn't able to confirm this. Someone stated that this was the first time that Zelenskyy's wife has been to America. Of course, not the first time for Zelenskyy. He's made many a trip to, hat in hand, beg for even more money for this no-win, unproductive, totally stupid war. But we'll get into that in a minute. So here is some video footage for those of you watching on the YouTube or the Facebook version of this musing, where Zelenskyy is speaking to the National Governors Association. Let's take a look.
Thank you so much, Governor Cox, esteemed governors, and all present here. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you who really cares about protecting life. These days, I have been in Washington. I visited the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation, and I was in the United States Congress speaking with representatives of both parties in both chambers. And I was at the White House and the NATO summit meeting with the President Biden. At each of these meetings, I thanked America, all our friends in America and all Americans who support Ukraine, our people, our freedom, our independence in this terrible war started by Russia. Thank you so much for your support.
And as is common with appearances like this, you're hitting multiple birds with one stone, right? If you're in this location with all of these important people, you're doing all these little one-off private meetings in addition to the big fanfare. That certainly took place with Governor Cox and his wife, who had a private meeting. I think some of their handlers and others are off to the side of the room, but they were able to sit down and have a few remarks with Zelenskyy and his wife. There was also another meeting with Utah's congressional delegation. Again, for those watching the video, you can see that here. This is Zelenskyy and his team meeting with members of Congress from Utah, huddled in this room at the hotel. Now, if you are a dignitary and you are traveling to, let's say, Italy and that area, you are going to swing by the Vatican, right, the true seat of power in the region, and pay your respects and meet with the Pope or some leadership of the Catholic Church. Similarly, when a dignitary comes to Utah, it has been common practice to swing by the church office building and get the photo op and the brief meeting with the leaders of the church. So, presidents of the United States have done this, leaders of other countries have done this, and so this is a fairly common thing. With Zelenskyy here in town for the National Governors Association, they did the same thing. They came to the church office building for a meeting, and according to a church spokesperson, they discussed the church's presence in Ukraine and humanitarian assistance throughout the region. Interesting, Zelenskyy and his cohort did not meet with the First Presidency. Neither President Nelson nor Oakes nor Eyring met with Zelenskyy and his team. I'll speculate as to why that is in just a moment. Let's speculate right now. It could have been that they were busy. Certainly, as I pointed out, this was somewhat of a last-minute appearance. So it could have been that they were tied up with other commitments that they couldn't get out of, they being the First Presidency. I searched social media, the church's newsroom site, trying to find were there any announcements of, temple dedications or other meetings, or I couldn't find anything. That's not to say that other meetings didn't happen. It could also be that they were private meetings and appointments, not public ones. Of course, they're very old. Maybe they're taking fewer meetings. They're going to sleep early like Biden or something, and not taking as many meetings. I don't know, but I could not find confirmation of any other scheduled visits or appearances that the First Presidency made. Perhaps then, again, speculation, this was kind of a signal that this was a meeting of lesser importance that did not merit the involvement of the First Presidency, creating a little distance, perhaps, between the church and the leader of a foreign nation mired in a military conflict. I'll get into that in just a second. So I think it's a signal of some kind that the First Presidency did not meet with Zelenskyy. I think that was purposeful. Remember that after the conflict started, we're going back over 2 years, February 2022. The church issued a statement. Here it is, just 3 short paragraphs. We are heartbroken and deeply concerned by the armed conflict now raging. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has members in each of the affected areas and throughout the world. Our minds and hearts have been turned toward them and all our brothers and sisters. We continue to pray for peace. We know that enduring peace can be found through Jesus Christ. He can calm and comfort our souls even in the midst of terrible conflicts. He taught us to love God and our neighbors. We pray that this armed conflict will end quickly, that the controversies will end peacefully, and that peace will prevail among nations and within our own hearts. We plead with world leaders to seek for such resolutions and peace. And some of the pushback at the time when they released this statement was that it was kind of bland or generic. They did not name, again, this was from the First Presidency, signed by the whole First Presidency. They did not name Russia. They did not name Ukraine. They were not specific as to, who this was in reference to. It was a more general statement. So that's number one, to support the argument that this is some kind of a signal. Number two is remember that the church updated, like a year ago or whatever it was, the statement on political neutrality. I did a musing on this. I'll go back and add this. In fact, to the little description in YouTube, I'll add this link so that people can see it later. So they updated this statement. Before, it was kind of the political neutrality statement we're all familiar with, that principles compatible with the gospel can be found in all political parties type of thing, right? That, hey, we don't get involved in politics. So in that other musing, I talk about, is that true? And I give some examples. But this statement was updated after the whole Ukraine-Russia conflict started. And now the statement includes the following text. The church does not seek to elect government officials, support or oppose political parties, or, and this is new, or generally take sides in global conflicts. The church is neutral in matters of politics within or between the world's many nations, lands, and peoples. The church does not typically issue statements regarding disputes in or between nations, lands, or peoples. Rather, it teaches the gospel of Jesus Christ with the knowledge of living the principles, limits, contention, and hostility. So, perhaps disputes in and between nations or whatever, global conflicts. Of course, in World War, in the past, the church certainly has made plenty of statements. But this is a new thing. The church is saying, hey, we're going to not, get involved in these things. And so the speculation is that the fact the First Presidency did not meet with Zelenskyy was kind of an action based upon those past statements. Hey, we don't want to, take a meeting with the guy running this war and forcibly drafting, 40-year-olds at this point, because all the 20 and 30-year-olds are on the front lines or have been killed. And we don't want to get, step in the middle of this conflict with this person who's going around begging for more American taxpayer dollars to throw at the military-industrial complex to, go continue to bomb people and prosecute this unnecessary war. So speculation, but so the question then is who met with Zelenskyy, if not the First Presidency? Well, here's one of the photos. This was released by Zelenskyy on his social media. Of course, he's on a tour, and his social media person is sharing all these photos and all these statements that he's making and kind of documenting all the people that he's glad-handing with. So here you can see on the left Elder Quentin Cook. He was the highest authority in the room, one of the apostles. He's, interestingly, the only one who got a placard on the side of the church. On the other side of the table, you got Zelenskyy's whole team, and him and his wife got a placard. No one else did. Usually when you're at these meetings, everyone gets a placard, maybe because this meeting was last minute or something, who knows, but only Elder Cook got a placard. So here he is on the left. Well, who's seated to his left? That is Sharon Eubank. Sharon Eubank, of course, making an appearance in a previous musing. I will also link to that in the YouTube description, called A New Year, A New World Order, that I did in January, talking about the globalism ties to the church, especially with the United Nations. So we talked a lot about Sharon Eubank in that one. She, of course, is director of Latter-day Saint Charities, which then makes sense why she was in this meeting if they're talking about kind of the good humanitarian work, but she is an out-and-out globalist. I shared several quotes in that other musing. I'll just briefly reference a couple. In 2018, at the Global Interfaith Forum, she said that the United Nations 2030 agenda of sustainable development goals, all this big government stuff, she said that agenda won't happen without religion. The way forward is to do just what this forum has as its goal: invite and respect as many faith actors as possible, build understanding among them, and integrate them into every aspect of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals agenda. It will lead, she said, to the greatest success possible for equity, justice, and peace. Equity, important. That's an intentional word. It's a Marxist word. The year following, at the Second Global Summit on Religion, Peace, and Security, she said that the good that religion can do, especially when it comes to integrating or achieving sustainable development goals, is amplified when religious groups work in partnership with each other and with government. 2019 in Geneva, a side event when the United Nations was meeting there, she said that when it comes to multilateral humanitarian work, organizations have to work with the United Nations. They are simply the only organization that can effectively coordinate multilateral work. Final example, 2021 at BYU, they hosted this G20 Interfaith Forum on COVID vaccination challenges. And she said that she talked about the power of trusted faith leaders. She said, we know for a long time that it is through the trusted voice of faith leaders that people can change their resistance to these things. In other words, use the church to kind of weaponize faith in behalf of government agendas and push people to vaccination. On Elder Cook's right at this meeting, this guy is Christopher Waddell. He's first counselor in the presiding bishopric, again, overseeing humanitarian type of efforts for the church. And who's this guy? To Sharon Eubank's left. That is our man, Aaron Sherinian. Zelenskyy even posted this close-up of him peering over the shoulder of Zelenskyy, looking at Aaron Sherinian. I will give it to the man. He is a good dresser, looking pretty sharp. For those who didn't watch that other musing, which I will link to as well in the YouTube description, Brother Sherinian was hired as the head of public affairs and media relations for the church about 6-7 months ago. And this is what the Deseret News at the time said. The managing director of the church communication is a trusted communication advisor to the church's senior leadership, including the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and works under their direction. The managing director also leads the department's work in global, external-facing communication strategies for the church. He oversees several teams: media relations, government, community, and interfaith relations, international area relations, and so forth. He previously, as I said in that musing, and we talked a lot about this, he was the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer for the United Nations Foundation for 9 years. He, in 2022, he had posted that he had been to the United Nations General Assembly conferences for like 17 years. So this guy is just steeped in globalism. And as I said earlier, some had speculated that after all the pushback and blowback and so forth that I contributed to, and others very concerned, because when you look at, again, in that musing, I go into it in deep. I'm not going to here. This guy is just a total leftist progressive. He was championing all these causes that are even hostile to the church. He was promoting the kind of rainbow, LGBT, everything else, and championing the Supreme Court ruling that legalized gay marriage across the country that the church had been fighting against. So he's publicly saying, yeah, this is great. And so he was at odds with the church, and now he is in this privileged position as a direct advisor to church leaders, despite having these very strong leftist, globalist type of personal opinions. Interestingly, Sherinian has been totally silent on Twitter since he got this new position. His last tweet was late last year, just before his new position was announced. So he has been silent on Twitter, where he's got about 20,000 followers. However, on Instagram, where he's got 10% of that, about 2,000 followers, he's been very active, but entirely about personal stuff. Lately, in the past few days, it's been that his family has been finally moving out to Utah. So he's been back in D.C., packing up, getting his family all ready to go, and they're now relocated to Utah. It seems like up in Bountiful or somewhere up in that area where they've settled. And so he is posting, but more just personal stuff. Why does any of this matter? Why is globalism a concern? Globalism erodes sovereignty. It erodes local decision making. It empowers bureaucracy and middle managers. Look just this past few days at Elon Musk and the EU. You got the head of the tech regime, whatever, for the European Union saying that they're going to fine Twitter and sue them for not censoring misinformation, so-called, and Elon Musk revealing in turn that the EU offered a secret illegal deal that if they would, re-empower a bunch of censors within the organization to take down these posts that the EU wanted them to, that then they wouldn't be fined, and it was kind of a little, blackmail type effort. So Elon went public and said, we're going to take this to court and air this publicly to fight for free speech. Gotta love that guy, protect him at all costs. But that is the problem with globalism. You empower these ridiculous middle managers and bureaucrats who wield their authority. It's like Atlas Shrugged. You get all these ridiculous moochers, these leeches who just, drain the economy and siphon off the intellectual power of the producers, the people actually doing stuff. Globalism centralizes control. That action alone, the centralization of authority, empowers the Gadi Antons of the world. Decades ago, you had the likes of McConkie and others saying that Satan is now the head of all the governments in the world, that the adversary, through secret combinations, controls all these governments. And when you centralize them even more, you're minimizing the ability to fight against it. You're centralizing power, which makes it infinitely harder for the average individual to do anything to push back against those efforts. And so the Gadi Antons are able to have greater influence. Is it any wonder that the globalists are largely like atheist type individuals, or some of them even Satanists and crazy people advancing these causes? It's all secret combinations all the way down. And the ideology of globalists is very left, as is the case with Sherinian, as is the case with Eubank. These people favor more government. They publicly oppose things that their church stands for. It's the erosion of the family and individual rights, and the consolidation of authority in the government, and that is a problem. So Brother Sherinian has not gone away. Here he is sitting in this meeting with a world leader in the middle of this highly propagandized war that American taxpayers are being stolen from through both taxes and inflation to fund the military-industrial complex that's wasting all this money and funneling it to, it's like what Ron Paul said, right? Foreign aid is poor people in rich countries giving money to rich people in poor countries. This is an unjust war. There is an option for peace. The United States leadership has basically torpedoed past resolutions for peace because they want to use this like in a game of Risk for furthering their globalist agenda and imperial domination. And they want it, like Afghanistan and Iraq, to be a forever war. The people in power benefit from polling, from funding, from power by maintaining these forever wars that allow them to funnel money like crazy without any transparency and accountability to their buddies. And the military-industrial complex, which, as we know from, we know those certain members of the church that Satan likes to buy up armies and navies, that the military-industrial complex is hand in glove with the adversary's efforts to dominate the world and oppress God's people. It's like Spencer Kimball saying, we worship these false gods of stone and steel. They're false gods. They're idols. And these people are committing idolatry who support this type of stuff, including the globalists. So I will end there only to say that we have not seen the last of Brother Sherinian and Sister Eubank and others like them who are kind of leftist, globalist type of individuals, have worked their way into positions of power, who are advising busy church leaders who don't have the time necessarily to meet all the people and investigate all the things. They lean on the advice of these people in privileged positions. And so we're going to see their influence radiate throughout the church. We're going to see the church more cozy with the United Nations and with globalist efforts, despite that statement on political neutrality. So this is not the end. This is the beginning. One can only surmise that the likes of Brother Sherinian, as they are able to then staff up and hire people within their departments, are going to employ people who are like-minded with them, that we will see more, not less, or fewer people in the church who share these same values. So what do you think about that? This, to me, seems like a worrying direction for the church to get cozy with people like this. And one would hope that there would be kind of an about-face and some repentance or whatnot, and say, no, we're not going to go that direction. Let's find someone else for this privileged position of authority and advice for the senior leaders of the church. But that's not the case. And here we are half a year later, Brother Sherinian's still doing his deal, and probably will be there for a long time to come and leave a lasting mark on the direction of the church through the advice and influence and the people he hires and puts in positions of authority throughout the infrastructure of church staff. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you next Sunday.